Good evening to the community. Good evening to the commissioners. My name is Chris Bartlett, and I'm the executive director of the William Way LGBT Community Center.
Good evening. My name is Mike Hinson. I'm the founder and former executive director of the Colors Organization and the city's first liaison to LGBT communities for the mayor.
In our testimony, we want to share two key ideas from our recent history: that evolving coalitions of LGBT and allied Philadelphians have worked and will continue to work within and outside government to grow resources for our communities and to counter racial and other disparities. And we believe that there are practical actions to be taken by both government and non-governmental entities to move us even further along in confronting racism in our communities.
When I joined the administration of then Mayor John S. Street in 2001, my role was to assure that city services, programs, and policies were accessible and sensitive to the needs of the city's LGBT community. I was also tasked with assembling an LGBT advisory board on which Chris served. I forgot to mention that Chris and I have been working as colleagues and friends for over 25 years. I'm still on. That's why I have him here. Mayor Street and others at the time gave me and members of the advisory board great leeway to tackle some of the toughest issues facing LGBT communities at the time. Because of our thoughtful selection of advisory board members, which included folks from many different geographic and cultural communities, we were able to view and tackle our work in a way that allowed us to ensure long-lasting policy and programmatic change with broad impact. One major achievement during this time was the addition of protections for gender identity into the city charter. It was our strong belief then and now that transgender individuals must be given the full acknowledgement and protection of the law. Without hesitation, Mayor Street agreed. Michael Williams wrote the charter edition, and City Council, with leadership from then Councilman DeChico, passed this protection.
We also worked in partnership with PHMC to complete the city's first LGBT census, which identified LGBT citizens in every neighborhood of the city and pointed out the health disparities faced by these LGBT Philadelphians, and especially LGBT Philadelphians of color. This census allowed us to argue for additional funding for community-based organizations, and especially those like Colors, Scalay, and Asiac, that were led by and served LGBT people of color. Finally, we found resources for a study of LGBT youth, which served in part to address how to create safe spaces for these youth, mainly of color, many of whom congregated on 13th Street. We share these few examples to make the point that collective work and responsibility is a shared principle. It requires us to listen to those experiencing challenges that prevent them from having the same protections and benefits as any other group, and together develop sustainable solutions. Many of the voices we will hear today are people who have strong reason to be concerned, and these concerns should and must be addressed.
That leads me to share some of the ways we concretely address racism in our LGBT communities, both in bars, in nonprofits, and elsewhere. I myself have numerous examples of facing racism, even within my official role. For example, while serving in the street administration, I was out on a ride-along one evening with the then chief inspector for the police department and several individuals from city government. We met up with one bar owner in the neighborhood, and he invited us to have dinner with him at his establishment. As we entered his establishment with the owner, a white gay man, I was carded by his employee, even though I was clearly with the owner, the chief inspector, and several city government officials. This, unfortunately, was the norm then, and it is the norm now, as a similar incident happened to me a couple months ago at Eye Candy. Sadly, overt and covert racism continues in both old and new ways. To address these issues, I have protested businesses in the neighborhood, challenged organizations that serve people of color to hire people of color in leadership positions, held town hall meetings with neighborhood associations, wrote articles and policies, and added a law to the city charter. It is the nature of such change that we must be ever vigilant, for the successes of many years ago can easily be reversed. We must count on new generations of leaders to point out the setbacks and hold us accountable for getting back on track. This is what is going on in our communities now, and it is a welcomed conversation.
Thank you. And beyond the conversations, we need action. Given the current challenges our communities face, we offer the following recommendations as a way forward. One, that a joint statement or letter from the Human Relations Commission and the Office of the Mayor be issued to businesses in the neighborhood, reminding them about the protections available to Philadelphians and our visitors as detailed in the city charter. This letter should provide targeted and specific language about the law, the responsibilities of business owners to adhere to it, and the penalties for not doing so. Training should be offered through the Independent Business Alliance to its members and others regarding the protections available to Philadelphians and our visitors as detailed in the city charter. This training should specifically focus on how to implement the law from a practical viewpoint.
The Human Relations Commission should test businesses to gain better understanding of the extent of discrimination that may be taking place and offer remedies, including penalties, for discrimination actions found, and that a non-city hotline should be made available to solicit additional information about discriminatory practices taking place in our communities. The data from this hotline can be used to shape the future training for government, private organizations, and businesses throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you.